You ever just like dream about Obi-Wan Kenobi? You're just like, man, that is the highest form.
And there's
the intro. I knew it. I knew it.
All right, ready? Hello there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Without Apology. I'm Josiah Bogue. To my left, Stevan, Gamauf, River Harter, and our very first time special guest, Josiah Bogue.
What's up, everybody?
We are now like 30 minutes over schedule because we've just been ripping Steve for his hair. So take a look at Steve. Take a look. Well, I guess it's a podcast, but go find Steve on Instagram, and you will see that
Just take a look at him.
he has been getting his hair cut by
Gamauf.
a blind Amish dog.
Women,
My barber follows my Instagram page.
if anyone listens to Steve on this podcast and thinks to themselves like, man, he seems like a really high quality guy, I just want to let you know he is. It's just like when you look at him, it might deter you.
It's a Samsung
it's
phone.
fair. No,
That's what it
fair.
is.
It's not a Samsung. It's like a
Samsung,
OnePlus phone.
No, a Samsung is
like way
superior in every other way to an Apple, but it looks bad.
It's like my house right now. My house is a very high quality house. Its fatal flaw is that it's purple on the outside. But everything else is great about it, but it's purple. That's Steve.
All right.
So, yes, I'm just purple
Steve,
on the outside.
If Steve gets a fade, gets like thicker, squarer glasses, and pegs his jean, woo!
Yeah, that would do it.
I can't do that. Listen,
need my
okay,
help.
the haircut I agree with. Okay, I need a new haircut for sure.
That's baby steps.
We're on stepping stones here. Okay, we're not on full blown like we're just gonna do everything at once.
Me
all
and
right?
River have been telling
him
Steve
some
to get a
Converse.
haircut for years at this point. And yet the blind Amish dog lives on run.
This poor man is going to literally
That's
listen
what
to
I'm
this.
gonna call your hairstyle from now on.
This poor man is gonna listen to this, and I feel so bad.
No offense, man. I'm sure Steve is like, yeah, I just cut my hair like this, and then brings out a bowl.
You guys ever seen the movie The Shaggy Dog with Tim Allen?
Stop.
I feel like if that happened to Steve, he would turn into a human.
Dude, I'm all right. So the podcast.
No, this is it now.
The podcast.
This is the podcast.
Yeah, without apology, right? Yeah.
I would say it's my hot take, but I think everyone agrees. So
My mother disagrees.
It can't be a hot take.
My mother disagrees.
Oh, and now the barber
Steven,
has a name.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Steven,
wow.
we love you so much.
We
Just
do.
so you know.
We do.
Sure.
It's the
That's
inside
what they
we
all
look at.
say.
All right.
Oh,
Welcome to the podcast. Here's my hot take, for real. I know literally every time my sports things, it's a sport thing every time, but I have yet to been wrong, so I'm just going to keep going with it. Baker Mayfield is cancer to the Browns.
Wow. We've put that word to it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a strong word.
That's a strong word.
It is. He can't throw. And you have two top 10 wide receivers, and he can't throw to them.
Okay, he is not the best on the offensive team right now. I'll give you that. He's not the best. He's definitely bringing them back a little bit. But a cancer?
He is not bringing them back.
Maybe
No,
he's
he's holding them back.
Maybe he's a zit. You know, because like zits, they cause insecurity. It's not that they're like there's something wrong with the zit. It's more just like you think like, oh, I can't go to prom because I got the zit.
Yeah, except
got
the
it.
Zit doesn't throw an interception every game.
Hey, listen, the Zit might throw an interception every game, all right? It's just part of the Browns, okay? It's part of the Browns.
I love watching them, but we should be playoff bound. If we had a half-decent quarterback, step it up, Baker. I know you're listening.
Cancer is a little extreme.
Yeah,
I think they just need to change their training regimen. Switch him, instead of running and rushing, just have him on a strict, 3 days a week, just passing. That's it. That's all he's doing.
Just throw the ball.
He's a quarterback. That's what he does all
Well,
day.
he needs to do it better.
It's like
correct.
your only job
Literally.
as a quarterback.
Oh, I know
is
that,
to
but then he-
pass.
That's like if a kicker.
Well, why is he rushing then?
To me, if a kicker misses,
'Cause he
I'm
knows
like, what
he
have you
sucks
been
at
doing in
passing.
practice?
That's what I say. I sit there and I'm like, when a kicker kicks the ball and misses.
What
I
have
sit
you
there-
been doing?
Like, you kick the ball for a living and you get paid millions.
You do
right?
one
He's stretching,
thing.
okay?
You do one thing.
I don't think they get paid millions.
They do.
Yeah.
Starting kickers
get a lot of money.
Oh
for
my
just to kick a
gosh.
ball through.
That's what I'm
two-
saying. And when they
two
miss,
golden posts.
Man,
I'm
I
like,
have picked the wrong career. Man alive. I
So
didn't.
ministry or kicking a ball through a field goal? Let's see.
I kick. I'll kick.
All right, now let's get into the meat.
The meat.
We're gonna get into the meat of the conversation. The reason we have Josiah on is because he's a very close personal friend to all of us.
Wow.
He's actually my
Yes.
brother, guys.
Just a friend, guys.
He's actually my brother. If you didn't know that.
Surprise.
I'm very hard to get on shows, but Isaac pulled a favor.
Yeah,
We booked him.
It's what I do.
With
I
the
know-
brother, with the brother card.
I know Luke P. So
Okay.
I mean,
Me and Luke P are both very hard to get.
Yes. Believe it or not.
mark my words, Luke P. will be on the show. Mark my words.
I bet he would. I bet you could do it.
I bet he would.
I bet he'd zoom in for it or something.
I
No,
think
he
he would.
in person.
He'd get here.
He would be.
Oh,
here.
he has to
I will
be-
get him.
You guys have to travel to him.
Passion.
Where's he even from? The Bachelor.
He's
Fake
from The
Luke P
Bachelor.
fan.
I'm sorry. Do you DM Luke P?
Tyler
I
Hero's
don't-
number is 14. I just had to justify that for
Do you
everybody.
guys? No, never mind.
All right, I just want
Never
to let you guys know about something really cool that's happening. So Josiah runs this thing called, he helps run this thing called Collective. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Collective?
Collective, yeah. So Collective is the young adult ministry for Grace Church, and it's an absolute blast. We meet on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock at Grace Church's building, 754 Gent Road in Bath, Ohio. And so it's a great place. I think it's a great place to explore your faith, no matter where people are at. Like, we have a lot of people that don't follow Jesus at all. They come. We have a lot of people that have been following Jesus for a long time that come. We dive into that, and it's really about, in the context of understanding Jesus more, building relationships. And the young adult years are lonely, really lonely.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to get everybody together. We got music, we got teaching, and then we just hang out for a really long time. And
Lots of 9 square.
Lots of
Yes.
Some
nine
food.
square, some food, some games. We're having not this week, next week we're having a huge Halloween party. So you want to come to the Halloween
yeah.
party? Yeah. Word on the street is there's a mega prize.
Mega prize.
Mega prize
prize.
for
Mega.
the best costume. Like,
Boom.
Wow.
we're going full send on this one. So
Full send.
That's awesome.
yeah.
I think so to kind of dive into this idea of like a college age. Like, I know a lot of people, like you said, Josiah, feel lonely during this time of
Yeah.
like the young adult years. I think one of the coolest things about diving kind of head first into one of these communities is that 100% of the people that come to events like this that are in this age group want to be there. They've come there for a purpose.
Yeah.
I think if you look around to a lot of different places, you'll see the idea of, well, like 80% of the people actually want to be there, but then 20% their parents maybe are like egging them
Yeah.
to come on, or
Right.
maybe like, no, this is like you're in college age now. You're an independent
You're an adult.
human.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You get to
So
make your own
now-
decisions.
Yeah. So now it's kind of really cool to see like 100% of the people that come, they want to be there.
Well, there's something beautiful about the community that you chose. And, like, there's, like, you have your family, and God gave you your family for a reason. And then God also lets you pick these relationships that you get to have. And that is what's really cool, because no one's mom makes them go. Or if they do, I have to talk to their mom about boundaries and how weird that is.
Awkward.
Right? And similarly, it's not like a job or school where you have to go to job or you have to go to school or else something bad will happen. You know, it's just a blast. And you guys
Yeah.
are all there. It's super fun.
And you go one time and then you want to go again.
Yeah, you
And
go-
you
yeah,
make
you-
friends and all this stuff.
The
and
only
it's-
hard one is the first one, as anything worthwhile goes. The
Yeah,
first time
very
you do
true.
something new is hard.
Also, I would add this. So at Collective, you get a unique, just plethora of different types of people and activities that go on there. So, for instance, after Collective, me and Isaac and Steve are all at a basketball life group kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
And we have all sorts of other groups that, if you want to dive into an interest, but also in a community of people that will also push you towards Christ, we have all sorts of groups that will lead you to that.
Yeah.
So,
There's
Yeah,
so many.
If you're interested in joining that and being a part of a life group or a connect group or just want to hang out with people, DM our account. If you have our number, text one
Yeah.
of us,
Yeah.
Collective or Without Apology.
And you can always check out our Instagram. It's just GCM_collective, GCM_collective, and then you'll find all the info that you need. There's tons of groups that do there's a group that watches The Mandalorian every week. I lead a group.
Yeah.
there's a board game group.
There's a board
There's a
game
board
group.
game group.
I lead a group where we have a life group, and then those that want to hang, we watch The Bachelorette after. I don't know if that.
Oh my gosh.
It's a crazy one.
That's incredible.
yeah.
We should go to
my
this.
switch life groups.
So the point of what I'm trying to say is, if you go to Collective, there are tons of people there who will push you exactly where you want to go, and in a way that makes you feel comfortable. So I would highly encourage you to go and find out more about that.
And I will further incentivize you by letting you know that you will be entered to win a hoodie.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Everybody loves hoodies, and
Yes.
especially in this wonderful weather.
They're really dope hoodies.
They
I'm
are.
gonna.
They are.
If you're just listening, check out our Instagram or our YouTube. I'm gonna put a picture up of these hoodies. But if you go to Collective and you say, "Hey, I'm at Collective because I was listening to the world's best podcast without apology.
Without apology,
And
obviously.
I heard about this opportunity. Can I win a hoodie?" And I will say to you, absolutely you can. Maybe. I'll put you enter.
You get entered into a drawing.
into-
Yes.
But I'm not imagining this is going to be like thousands. Like I think if you
Hey,
do this,
hey.
your chances. No. I'm saying I think if you do this, your chances are very high.
Oh, yes. Oh,
yeah, like
absolutely.
you're very high on.
Yeah.
the
So
list,
so go to Collective, find anyone you see here, anyone on the First Impressions team, say, "I am here because I heard about it through Without Apology," and we will get you set up to win a hoodie.
Yes.
They are
Just like
super,
that.
super
Sick.
dope.
Just
super,
like
just
that.
like that.
Super dope.
Yeah.
Yes, highly coveted, never imitated, never duplicated.
They are very highly coveted, actually.
Grace
That-
is always more.
Yeah. Always. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's what it
Facts.
says. Yeah, it's super cool.
It is nice.
Speaking of grace and being more, Josiah, the reason you
Wow.
like my segue.
That was really good.
What a
So-
segue.
I mean, I don't know how good a segue can be when you say, "Did you like my segue?" After that,
He killed it. He killed it right
We're-
there.
you nailed it up to there.
We segued, did we not?
Yeah, you did.
Just
Here-
saying.
We're here.
So, Josiah, why are you even here? Please, tell us about your passions and why you even wanted to be on the show.
Before I even say this, I learned the other day that the inventor of the Segway died because he
R.I.P.
rode a Segway off a bridge.
He segued.
No, it's terrible. No, this actually happened, but I just learned about this, and if I saw his name or his face, I would feel way more sad. But since this is just a hypothetical in my head,
No.
yeah, he rode his Segway off a bridge.
On purpose?
No,
Wow,
it
complete
it
accident.
spiraled out of control. Yeah,
That's so sad.
you can look that up.
So
Dean
now-
I
Kamen.
forgot the word segue
Dean Kamen.
was a,
Yeah.
a thing you
Yeah,
rode
look
around
up Dean
on.
Kamen death.
I know, right? It's
Did
like
the inventors.
I know,
Did the
right?
inventor? Oh yeah, click that. Did it really
They
die?
blog mobile
Well, he's
board.
looking this up right now. Did the inventor of the Segway really die? Loading.
Loading, let's
Loading.
see.
Loading.
I read a thing today. The inventor.
No!
No way!
No.
It is! It's a hoax! Many people still don't know the truth about the fatal Segway accident that took place on September 26, 2010, in the country of Yorkshire in
while
England.
ago.
Just yesterday, a client and one of the agencies of Mobile Board, the network for Segway PT rental, repeated the same thing. Of course, the media hasn't always been very accurate with reporting. Here's the true story about the accident. First of all, no, the inventor of the Segway PT, Dean
Oh,
Kamen,
good.
is not
That-
dead.
He's
that-
alive,
he's
guys.
alive.
He's
PT
alive.
Dean.
He made it.
Yes.
Go Dean!
Go Dean.
I'm
What
glad-
a winner.
I'm glad you looked this up because now we know. There was a whole story to that, so we can keep
Well,
reading.
there's this guy, the guy who invented Pringles. I was reading this thing. When he died, he just died like he was like 90, right?
Yeah,
Nothing
he was
horrific.
just-
he just died.
He
said
died
he
from
wanted
the Pringles
Yeah, the
launched
Pringles.
him into a bridge.
No, he said he wanted to be buried in a Pringles can. And so I was reading this story, and his kid stopped at a Walgreens, bought a Pringles can, put his ashes in it, and buried him in a Pringles can.
That's
oh my
amazing.
goodness gracious.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Did he eat the Pringles first?
He's dead, bud.
Well, no, not the
son.
dead guy. The son eat the Pringles
No,
first.
yeah, they just dumped ashes on a bunch of Pringles.
I mean, that works too.
It
That'd
was
be
original
terrible.
flavor.
That's so sad. Like that would be like the saddest like eating of Pringles you'd ever have.
That's what I'm saying.
Like I'm eating this to clear room for my father's ashes.
Oh my
Jesus.
gosh.
Like, that's
We're
like-
going to talk about Jesus.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We've been. What a diverse conversation.
So here, yeah. So what we were talking about. Well, we were talking about my biggest passion in life, and this is why I run Collective. My biggest passion is helping people understand God's heart, because I think especially in the young adult phase of life, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what God is like and what He cares about and what He's looking for and this thing and that thing, and they all lead people away from God's heart. Which I think He's actually made fairly clear, but everybody kind of convolutes it, with the things that are in their minds, with the somebody told me this thing, that thing, with whatever it is. And so we were talking about like what are some barriers that people have between understanding God's heart, that God's heart is to love every person, that God's heart is to save every person, that God's heart isn't just to be a distant God who like gets you to go to heaven, but He actually like wants to be your Father that walks with you, that you talk to every day. Like that's the relationship that He wants, and we mess all this up. And so one of the things that River and I were talking about a little bit that kind of messes this up is I think some of us get hung up on this idea of justice. The idea, basically the argument goes like this, is how can an all-loving God allow bad things to happen to people? Or how can an all-loving God, if all God wants is to love you, how can he allow punishment to happen?
Yeah.
Because doesn't God save everybody? Doesn't God, if he loves anybody, why wouldn't he like overcome that thing? And so that's just one of the things that I think throws a lot of people off.
It's a fair question.
It's a very fair
It's a very fair question. It's a very real one.
Yeah. I think the big thing that I was thinking about this, and I said, there we go, River. I was thinking about this, and I was like, I think that it boils down, and first off, like, not only just like being a just God is a big thing, but I think that also a big thing that people think about is, am I worthy to be in a presence of somebody who, if he is so high, if he is so mighty, how am I? I've messed up. I've done all these different things. But I was thinking about when it came to the justice idea, like, you can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it as, well, if he's a just God, why does he let everything happen? And I look at it like, I'm thankful that a just God that we have is able to do what he knows is right, and what he knows is good. And so I think that like it depends on a perspective that you look at it. And until you witness and until you understand really the heart of God, it's kind of tricky. It's like a catch-22 almost.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't understand it, then you're not going to understand like the reason for the just.
You'll never give it. And there's a few ways that people react to it, because I think that's a good perspective. But the way that most people tend to go with it is one, they'll say, one reaction is, how can an all-loving God also be just? And they'll be like, well, these punishments just aren't real. Yeah. They'll be like, this whole side of justice and this whole side of like all these things in the Bible that says this is going to happen to you, or this is like, these are the consequences for this. They'll be like, that's just not true. Like, God will figure it out. It's all love. God's going to figure out love in the way that I define love. That's really what's interesting about it. The other way that you go is you'd be like, well, these are contradictory. So they might be kind of true at the same time, but instead of discounting God's justice, now I'm going to discount God's love. So he's lying about what he's saying. He can't be all loving. He will punish us. There is hell. It is hellfire and brimstone kind of a thing. But this is not a God that is worth trusting. This is not a God that's worth experiencing.
Yeah. So how do you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go.
All right. Yeah. So on that note, so for justice, there's Romans 2:6 says he will render it to everyone according to his works, and I would encourage you to read the rest of that passage.
Read Romans.
Just read Romans.
Please
read
Romans.
Great. So there's this idea of distributive justice, which is like how his like love and his justice coincide. So there's this idea of remunerative justice, which is a reflection of divine love. God rewards the obedient, and then there's the retributive justice, which is the expression of God's divine wrath. God punishes the wicked. So God's justice is completely, you get to see a lot of God's character when you look at the Mosaic covenant, look at his Mosaic law. That's the Pentateuch.
You're using some big words.
Pentateuch.
Isaac
corrects me all the time.
What is the Mosaic covenant, Mosaic law? Like, what are you talking about?
So I'm like referring to like the 10 Commandments. I would go through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. All of that is what where you see God's character most. I forget the word I was going to use, but that's where you can like find like what he really desires, what is really his heart for us, is because he lays it out because his standard is perfection, and he wants us to be close to him, and what he wants us to love is what he loves and all of that, and he wants us to hate the things that he hates, which is sin. So we get to see a lot of that and where his justice is from. So you get to see his righteous, pure hatred, which is towards sin. Now, that's just where I was going when I was looking at the idea of justice, which is why his justice is right.
Do
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got what you're saying. I think, like, maybe this is what you're trying to say, but, like, when people look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, they're like, oh, what happened? Like, something made God really mad, and then all of a sudden, like, he wasn't that mad. Like,
he switched gears.
Right, it's a whole new, like, person. So how do we look at, like, because we do see some severe punishment, right, in the Old Testament that is, like, it's hard to, like, whoa, how can God that loves me, like, do something like this? And then we see the New Testament, and people think Jesus is just lovey-dovey and everything's okay and do what you want, which is, of course, not true. So how do we hold the Old Testament and the New Testament in light of that?
It's very interesting, because what River's talking about is good, because if you follow the whole story of the Bible, you have God is basically slowly revealing his heart to humanity over the course of time. So he starts off with Adam and Eve, and he starts very basic. If you think of like a kid growing up, right? So when you have a toddler, you're just like, no, don't lie. Like our rule was, my dad's rule with us was don't lie. That was the only.
You would get soap in your mouth, and I can tell you what every brand of soap tastes like.
Yeah. So but that was the only rule. There was one rule.
Right.
It's just don't lie to dad and don't lie to mom. And so God starts with this way. He's like, hey, do whatever you want. Just don't eat from this tree. That's it. And then they failed doing that, just like every kid fails at doing the one rule that their parents give them. And then he moves on to what River's talking about, this phase of humanity where God is revealing to the Israelites, which are his chosen people at that time, he's showing them what is good and what is bad. Yeah. And that's just like being a kid. When you're a kid, your mom says drugs are bad. Well, why are drugs bad? It doesn't matter. Drugs are bad, right? Yeah. Don't cuss. Why is that word bad? It doesn't matter. Just don't cuss. It's just very black and white. It's good, bad, and for a kid, that's exactly what you need. And at that phase of humanity, that's exactly what we needed. Yeah. And then it moves on to when River's talking about this idea of covenants, and basically all a covenant is an agreement that God, a promise, that God makes with humanity. And so there's this whole phase of covenants where God is basically saying, hey, if you do the things that I say that are good, things are going to be very prosperous for you. They're going to go really well. Your country is going to prosper. Everything's going to go really well. But if you do these bad things, then bad things are going to happen. Some of that is God. Some of that is God inflicted. I don't really even think that's the right way of thinking about it. I think the better way of thinking about it is God allowing the natural consequences for sin just to play out. It's not even like God is like killing you.
He's giving you what you want.
He's letting these things play out. And so what happens is, in my world, all the time, in this phase of life, some professor, some college kid that's taken a couple classes, they'll say, I can't believe in a God. Have you read the Old Testament? There's these mass slaughters, right? There's these genocides, or God will say, God will allow Israel to be harmed in a crazy way, or God will allow Israel to punish another nation for the consequences of their sin. Yeah. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe in somebody like that. And then they'll think Jesus is completely different, which if you are familiar with theology at all, God and Jesus are the same person. So it's actually, you don't get to do that according to the Bible. You can make up your own version of it, but the Bible doesn't allow room for that. What happens is, those people that are saying that, 99.9% of the time, they've never read any of these stories. That's really the reality of it. Because when you look in the Old Testament, I've read through all the books of the Old Testament, and there's a pattern over and over again where Israel falls massively away from God. And I'm not talking about like telling white lies. I'm talking like they are worshiping other idols. They are giving into some crazy sexual, spiritual combinations, like prostitutes in the temple or like things like that. They are harming the innocent. So they are harming children, or they are harming the poor or the orphans or the widows. So they're like, what? It's not a tiny bit. It's like way off track. Right. Yeah. And so God will send somebody. God will say to Israel, hey, remember what we talked about. Like, you guys need to do what's right, and that's how you'll get blessed. So remember to do what's right. And sometimes they'll be like, okay, and sometimes they'll ignore him. And then God comes back and he says, hey, for real, like, you guys really need to do this. If you don't do this, here are the punishments. Like, this is going to, if you don't do this, Babylon's going to come in. There's another nation around them. Babylon's going to come in, and they're going to wipe you guys out. Or this disease is going to hit you guys, and it's going to wipe. You guys need to be careful. Well, then they ignore him. God comes back again, and he says, no, seriously, like, this is the last time I'm going to tell you. You guys need to do this, or you need to come around. They don't do it. God comes back again. And you see, like, these if you read the prophets or the books, God will come back 4, 5, 6, 7 times. He'll say it over and over again. And the reason he's saying this isn't even just because he's mad that you're disobeying him. It's because you're hurting all these other people. And Israel is supposed to be the nation that's pointing everybody else to God, and they're not pointing anyone to God. So no one gets to know God, no one gets to be close to God, no one gets loved. And then lastly, at the very end, if you read these stories, this is where people just jump right in. Finally, God says, hey, I've told you guys, And really with like a broken heart, he said, we have to do this now. This needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not even just to punish. It's really to purge the sin. It's kind of to get rid of the people that are harming all these other people. And then every time I heard one of my professors said when I was in college, one of my professors said that God never gives punishment without giving a plan for restoration. So every time God's like, finally, like, I told you guys, I don't want to do this, but I have to. Just like a parent disciplining their child, right? I have to do this. And God always says, but you can always turn around, and I will always be back. That's what Jeremiah 29:11 is like the verse everybody loves for the plans I have for you to prosper, right? That verse is God saying that, actually. That's after, in Jeremiah, that's after Israel is being punished by Babylon for ignoring God, and God says, but my plans are not for your destruction. My plans are for you to prosper. So I want you to turn back around and follow me. It's just that when you understand it in that lens, all of a sudden you're like, oh, he's not just smacking people because he's mad at them, you know?
Yeah.
But that's how people hear it.
I think that it's really insane. I don't want to say insane because it's easy. I do it all the time too. When you see something, like people nowadays, they'll cling on to the one thing and they'll hold it in their heart forever and ever. And they're like, you know what? I heard this once from the book of Jeremiah. I see all this terrible stuff. And then, like you said, they haven't read the past 20, 25 chapters in this book.
Right.
And it's like, oh, shoot, like this was kind of justified.
Right.
And stuff like that. So,
and people don't understand, like, from God's perspective, you have to know, God would say that sin is much more than doing something bad. Like disobeying God's law, it's not that you're making God angry. That's not really the paradigm he's talking about. He's saying that sin separates you from me. And what God is deeply concerned about isn't that you are making him mad and just, agitating him. What God's really mad is that over the course of time, you will become so far from him that you'll spend the rest of eternity separated from him. So when he's saying, like, here's the punishment for this sin, he's not saying, like, man, I hate people that do this. He's really saying it is much better that we get rid of this sin that will separate people from me for eternity. It's much better that we just nip this in the bud than that we allow these people to engage in this and to lead so many others, hundreds and thousands of people, completely away from him forever. So that's where a lot of where that's coming from.
If you want more elaboration on sin, I believe episode 5, we actually took an entire episode and talked about sin and its effects and stuff like that. And so Josiah's completely spot on in everything that he's saying. So earlier, Josiah, you brought up the question, how can bad stuff happen with an all-loving God and stuff like that, and yet bad things happen in the world? So let's go down that route. Like, how's that even possible?
How is that? Well, I think what we have to first understand is the results of sin. So the Bible is very clear that everything that is good and everything that's perfect, those are the things that come from God, and everything that is bad is a consequence of sin. There's no clean answer for why God doesn't prevent one thing or another. There really isn't a clean answer because God is all-powerful. And so the answer I would give is not an answer that anyone's going to like, which is for some reason God understands something that I don't understand.
Yeah.
Right? There is some, and I'm not going to say that if you had a loved one that died, I'm not going to say, well, that it's all for a reason. I don't want to give you a cliche answer, but there is somehow God is looking at the grand scheme of everything with you specifically in mind. He's not just like looking at all the humanity. He's looking at every individual heart, every individual person, and he's decided that this is what needs to happen. Now, evil, we have to remember, was never God's intention. Evil was Evil was our own introduction, right? Yeah. Mankind introduced evil, and so blaming God for the results of evil would not be correct from a biblical standpoint. But asking why God didn't prevent something in a supernatural way, I think actually that is a fair question, and that's where we get back to God understands. God sees things that we don't see. One of the things, somebody told me something, I forget where I heard this, but it popped in my head as really profound. Basically, to understand that if you saw everything that God saw, and you had his perspective, you would make all the same decisions that he's making, which is assuming you're good, right?
Yeah.
Assuming you're doing the good things, right?
Yeah.
But like if you could see everything that he saw and you were as good as he was, you would make all the same decisions. So somewhere, somehow, he's seen something. Now, here's the big thing that I don't think a lot of people get to. A lot of people freak out because they're like, how can God condemn certain behaviors, right? How can there be a hell, for example, right? How can there be a place where people that have chosen to live their lives in a certain sexual way, have chosen to be very arrogant, have chosen to give their life, not commit sin, but give their life over to some kind of sin? How can there be a place for that? And that's where we have to understand what the gospel or the news of Jesus actually is. Because when you guys, I've heard you guys talk about this, but sin, we think of sin in terms of actions, right? We think like lying, cheating, stealing, right? That's not a helpful way to understand it for this conversation. If you think of sin as a state of being, so sin is being imperfect. So if you're a sinful person, that means you're an imperfect person. I use this example all the time. If I have a shirt, a white shirt, like a perfect white shirt, that I dropped in mud and it's like covered in mud, and I pick it out, is that a clean or is it a dirty shirt?
Dirty shirt.
Right, it's a dirty shirt. And would you wear that in front of a king?
No.
I'd hope
No,
not.
I'd hope not,
That's why
right?
we need OxyClean.
Right, that's why you need OxyClean. Right, but if you have a clean and dirty shirt and there's just a little Sharpie blemish on it, right, there's a Sharpie, is that a clean or a dirty shirt?
Dirty shirt.
Also a dirty shirt. Would you wear that in front of a king?
No.
Probably not.
No, right? So this whole idea that somebody's worse than another person because of the things that they've done, first of all, it's misguided because God looks at the heart, not the actual actions. So that's the first problem. Second problem, even if he did look at the actions, God's standard is perfection. It's not how well intentioned were you, or it's not all this thing. His standard is perfection, and so we have to understand that God has to hold to his standard of perfection because he's just. And we want him to be just. We want, if somebody murdered a family member of yours, only a good God would deal with that murder in a just way. We want this, right? When there's a lot of racial-based violence right now. We want to have a God that is going to deal with the perpetrators, with the people that are hurting other people.
Yeah.
So we don't. But the problem is we have a God that's going to deal with that. We just get mad when he deals with things we don't want him to deal with, that's a little unfair because that means that we have to define God's terms. So God, you punish the people I think should be punished. You don't punish the people I don't think. Well, guess what? No racist person thinks that they should be punished.
Yeah.
Right? No one that does anything wrong thinks that they are the one that should be punished. Here's the gospel story. God's standard is perfection. None of us are perfect. Absolutely none of us. But somebody, because God is just, somebody had to be punished for the wrong. So if somebody killed somebody needs to be punished for that. If somebody lied to somebody from God's standard who is perfect, somebody needs to be punished for that. And the Bible is clear that the punishment, and this is what River was talking about earlier with the Old Testament law, the punishment for sins is death. Here's how God's love and God's justice coincide. God needs to punish somebody for the sin, but he loves us so much that he sent his own son, Jesus, to be punished for our sin.
Yeah.
That's how God's love and his justice coincide. All the wrath that we are supposed to get for the mistakes that we've made, if you are the person that has committed any kind of sin, that sin, the punishment for that sin has gone onto Jesus. And so now God loves us fully, like he always has, and his judgment is fully satisfied at the same time. And if you have placed your faith in Jesus Christ, and anyone that's listening, if you haven't, this is an opportunity for you. If you've placed your faith in Jesus, now when you stand before God, God doesn't pull up your record of wrongs. He embraces you open arms like a heavenly father because your sins have been completely paid for. His love overcame the punishments that you needed. His love and his justice work perfectly together to create the story of Jesus. And that's how we get all the way there.
Yeah.
And I love that. So, oh my goodness, that was so good. So
It's crazy. It's a crazy story.
It's so hard to comprehend how amazing that is.
It's everything. Yeah.
He sent his son who has done nothing wrong. It's hard when you put everything that you've ever done in your life next to that cross. It's impossible. It's like, how can I remain in this sin next to a God who came down, sent his son, he dies for me, for my sin, and overcomes it and rises 3 days later. How can I continue to live in the way that I've been living, knowing that someone's done this for me? And it just blows my mind because I know I still struggle with a lot of stuff. I know you guys do too. So it's just like, oh, how can I stay like this? I need to move to this next thing. I need to.
Right.
Yeah.
And guess what?
It's so amazing.
Everyone feels trapped in their sin. They feel trapped in what they're doing. Like, spoiler. River has this sticker on his laptop. It says, "Spoiler: God wins." Spoiler. One of my favorites. Like
that's
spoiler.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Spoiler: Jesus overcame sin and Jesus overcame death. Like those things that you're stuck in, those things you don't think you can get away with, those things that you're reliant on, all that can be broken. It can all be gone.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, just through Jesus. Through Jesus Christ.
And the implication is like, and this is where I think a lot of people get stuck, because the implication is that if Jesus has paid for all of our sin, and when we stand before God, what God's going to pull out is he's going to pull out Jesus' record, and he's going to evaluate you on Jesus' record. That means that even if you struggle with your sin for the rest of your life, it can be covered. If your faith is in Jesus. So I think so many people are down in the dumps because they struggle with pornography. They can't get past pornography because of their anxiety, because that they can't stop feeling so unworthy, because of their past that causes them to lash out in anger, or whatever it is, the things that they have committed. I think of often I know of women who have had abortions and who have come back and are overcome with guilt for what that means. Jesus Christ can cover and has covered every single one of those things, and even if you never pull it together, he can cover you. You don't have to pull it together first. Right. Even if you never do, he will cover that. You just have to give your heart over to him.
You go, Steve.
I think that I had one of my good old Stevie G rants on Instagram, and it's not really a rant. It was like where I just post this random thing that's on my mind. It was about like this idea of everyone always looks at a very earthly love. So they look at, well, do you approve of me? Do you, what are you doing for me? What are you doing? It's like to take this perspective of that type of love out of context, take it to the side. It's very, very hard if you did not physically see Jesus and what he did 2,000 years ago to say that is true. Like I believe 100%. It's very hard, I believe, to break yourself out of that idea. But it's like you kind of have to hit that point where you realize and you understand this love that I'm getting from other people isn't going to break me out of this. Or there's something else. There's got to be something else. And it's the idea of, like, everyone struggles with stuff. Everyone. It's just, where do you go for it?
Right.
And where do you put that recognition of where you can kind of get the help that you need from it, type of deal.
Right.
So,
And we talked the other week about there being a God-sized hole in everyone. I remember I work at sports ministry here at Grace Church, and one of the things we do is an event called Game Day, and it's a children's youth basketball league, and it's like, these kids are adorable. They can't hoist the basketball over their head. They're absolutely hilarious. But there was this little girl.
They're trying.
They're really trying. She's like a baby. She's like 3 or 4, and she has one of those like weird square things with shapes cut out, and you put the shapes like through the correct shape thing. And this girl like had the star and was punching it, trying to get it through the square. And I was like, no. And she was like just punching it and like beating the crap, and it broke and went in or something like that. But she was trying desperately to put something somewhere where it's not supposed to be. And this is what we all do every single day. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, everyone has a God-sized hole in their heart. Everyone has that thing that everyone is designed to worship. God designed everyone to want him. And what we do is we replace God, uppercase G, with God, lowercase g. And we worship being popular. We worship alcohol. We worship whatever, anything except God. And when we put that in the God-sized hole, we find ourselves empty. And wanting more and longing more. And we talked about sin. Sin will always leave you wanting more than what you bargained for.
And on the note, whether you're whether you're saved or unsaved, especially if you're unsaved, it's so much better. It's hard for us to understand that being judged is good. It's so much better that we are being judged by this God, because when he judges us, he's looking at our righteousness. And us being imperfect humans who are incapable of being righteous are now given the place of Jesus in all of his righteousness on the cross. All of the splinters that are in his back, the nails in his hand, all of the pain that he's going through, the emotional, mental anguish, the physical, it's just everything that he's going through in his perfect life is what we are being judged by, his perfection.
Yep.
So
Right.
that's why it's so, I'm begging, if you don't have a relationship with Christ, I'm begging you to try and dive into this, figure it out. Don't just take my word for it. It's so worthwhile, and it's real. I promise you, everything that I will tell you about Jesus, about this Bible, if it's from the Bible, it is true. All of it. So I beg you to try and investigate this, because it's all true. So it's better for us to be judged, because we're judged by a loving God who is going to look at us as Christ.
Yeah. I had it was so funny. I had a young life leader actually when I was in high school. He said to me, I dare you, to anyone who doesn't understand this yet. He said, I challenge you. Play along with it for a month. Just play along with it for a second. Like just humor me, all right? Play along with it for a month.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to come back to me. And he said, if you don't feel anything, I'll pay you $500. Like, if you truly, and he was like so adamant about this. And I was like, dude, you're going to lose a lot of money because some people are really stubborn. And it was like, he said it. And I really took a second to think about it. I was like, if you really do put your faith in Christ for a little bit, you're going to see something that's so different. And I think the big thing is there's like this barrier that everybody has. And once it's broken, this earthly kind of barrier of like, well, I'm not really seeing a spiritual side of anything yet.
Yeah.
I get a bunch of this earthly love, this earthly satisfaction, this earthly judgment, all of this stuff. Yeah. It gets broken down for give it a month is what he said. And it's so crazy to see that like perspective.
And I think when we're talking about barriers, I think one of the biggest barriers that people have that I've come across, and I just encourage everybody listening, like everyone thinks that Christianity, that what Jesus wants is behavior correction. Everyone thinks that what Jesus is looking for, that if you're gay, you need to stop being gay, and if you're whatever you're doing, like whatever you think is wrong, you need to stop doing this thing because the Bible says so, and God doesn't want you doing that. And there are things that, like I said, there are things that God has said, these things are good and these things are bad. But the gospel story, because we're being evaluated by Jesus, that means, and it's always meant that God's not looking primarily for your behavior correction. Anyone that's beginning your relationship with God, I'd encourage you to not really worry about that much. Just seek Jesus himself. What Jesus wants isn't your good behavior, because if you could give him good behavior, he wouldn't have had to die. Yeah. Right. There's no point in the good behavior. Right. Jesus isn't looking for good behavior. He's looking for your heart, and give him your heart first. And then guess what? What Paul talks about in Galatians is that as you hand over your heart to Jesus, then the behaviors are going to follow. But don't let that be a barrier. If you are stuck in something or doing something where you're like, God wants me to clean this up first. Don't worry about that. Give him your heart. Give him everything you have. Don't let one aspect of your heart not be given to him because you're holding on to something. But because we're evaluated by Jesus, there are no barriers of sin anymore. Yeah. Anyone can be a part of God's family. anyone, no matter what you struggle with. Mm-hmm.
Very true. Very, very true. Thank you so much, Josiah, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, big fan.
We hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember, if you come to Collective, Josiah, when's Collective?
Collective's every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. If you like what you see here, you get to see a lot more of that.
True.
Ignore that last part.
Or what you hear.
For all of you listening, yes, Steve's voices. I cannot deny Steve's voice.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, that's right.
Steve, you just say Collective?
Collective.
Oh,
wow.
Yes, there it is.
All right, so Collective, make sure to pop by. And if you come from listening to Without Apology, make sure to tell us that you came through listening.
Without Apology.
Through Without Apology.
The world's greatest podcast.
And we will make sure you are entered to win a hoodie. Thank you all so much. Check us out on social media at Without Apology. We are available on all your streaming platforms. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
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 The best.
You are the chosen one!